Yo, visualize shark takes, hit the wave grinding. In the chat, gun shark odds make it rhyming. Sunday vibes, smooth bets, no confining. Hats engaged, can't stop us from shining. Bet on the spread, liking it, keep it tight. Push the odds further, jack on the hindsight. Odds fellows mind grasping the right sight. Hats, caps on heads, winners in plain sight. Hit the light, get in the chat, feel the flow, cash it, every dollar see the bankroll. Sunday grinding picks, now you gotta know. Extra points on the screen, sharp minds always glow. Big parlays, predictions, we home. Standing tall, betting knowledge all.
On a suddenly not so casual Sunday in December, it is NFL The Extra Points, the big show, NFL Week 13, the Shark, the Gun, the Odds Fellow, the first Sunday in December, my favorite month of the year, I have to say. The weather's cold, the league is hot, right here live on Sharky Water Station X and YouTube. Get in the chat, talk to us, and of course, on the Guns Picks channel. Guns Picks, what's going on this morning, my brother?
Yeah, it is the first day of December, and man, it's a beautiful day out. It is sunny. Psych! No, we are recording this show, you dumb idiots. No, I'm kidding. All right, so yes, it is going to be a beautiful week because we've been absolutely cooking the NFL, and of course, we have the Odds Fellow wearing the DraftKings sweatshirt here with a hoodie. Odds, how's it going? You're muted.
There's a mute button there. DraftKings in the house. Love the hoodie. But pump for week 13. Lucky 13, hopefully, for you and yours on this beautiful holiday weekend.
Absolutely. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving, great Black Friday, and, of course, a great college football Saturday yesterday. It was. Sundays are for the Sharks. First play, we're going to the Gun. Chargers traveling to the East Coast at the Falcons off a tough loss in the Harbaugh Bowl last week, returning to where they performed very well on the road, and the Falcons do not function well in this spot. Guns Picks, Chargers on the money line, official.
Yeah, I think it's a bounce back spot. Like everybody says, like, oh, you have the Chargers coming off a short week. They have the Chiefs on deck. However, I think this is a good spot to take the Chargers. When you look at the Atlanta defense, they're ranked bottom of the league in most statistical categories. They're ranked 25th in opposing scoring, giving up 24.9 points per game, 25th in opposing yards per game, and 22nd in yards per play. And then while the Chargers are ranked in the middle of the road as far as offensive categories, look at what they've done in terms of scoring in the last 5 games. They put up 26, 27, 27, 24, and 23. So this is an offense that is on the uptick, that is playing to the level of their defense. Now, Atlanta has not done well out of conference this season. They're 0-3 ATS versus AFC opponents, giving up losing by an average of 15 points per game. They're 2-6 ATS dating back to last season, if you want to even go that far back. Situationally, you would think, like I said, the LA Chargers coming off that Monday Night Football loss, going to face the Kansas City Chiefs, that would be a detriment to them in the middle game. However, non-conference opponents with KC on the road, they've just done well. Look at the situations here. Away favorite, 3-1 ATS, covering the spread by 8.8 points per game. Coming off a loss, 2-1 ATS, covering that spread 4.7 points per game. Then the Chargers on the first leg of a road back-to-back, which they are in this situation, they're already 2-0, winning by an average of 15 points per game. And then, of course, they're playing a team from the NFC South. They're already 2-0 ATS, winning by an average margin of 20.5 points per game. This is just the perfect spot for the Chargers. I know they have the Chiefs on deck. This is a slam spot here for the Chargers. Give it to me. -1 as the play.
Yeah, any thoughts on this game?
I'd like the Chargers to get back on track, too. Too much infrastructure there. I think Harbaugh has changed the culture, and that's what you're going to see, right? He's just got to get out of Big Brother's way. And now Big Brother's out of the picture for now.
Yeah, I was just looking back as Guns was talking about it. Historically, in the career of Justin Herbert here, obviously season 1 with Jim Harbaugh, the previous regime, far more lackluster, but he has not been an auto fade the game before Kansas City. You go through these games, even going back 2 years ago when the Chargers did go to the playoffs, which is their arc right now. They opened 2022 against Las Vegas with a cover right before at Kansas City, so they did not tank that. And later on that year, they played a really tough game at San Francisco, played San Francisco incredibly tight. 22-16 inside of a possession before a tight loss versus Kansas City. So this is definitely not a look ahead. And again, I think you have to really center on the coaching advantage in this game. Jim Harbaugh is significantly higher level of a coach than the coach down in Atlanta. You saw it when, I believe, Raheem Morris, is that the name? Raheem Morris?
Yeah.
You saw it when he coached Tampa Bay years back. Lackluster football. And this is the constant conversation in NFL football with these recycled coaches and coordinators. If you can't do it once, you're not going to do it a second time. Look at Dennis Allen, Raiders, Saints, equally terrible. If you can't motivate guys once, you're not going to do it twice. And as Guns mentioned, the Falcons just totally underperforming outside of the division. 4th matchup this year against the West of the AFC, getting dominated across the board. Take the Chargers. I believe this will cash an official from the gun. Staying at 1 o'clock, more out-of-division football, out-of-conference football. Seattle traveling to MetLife Stadium. Geno Smith was born here, if you will, within the league, and he is returning to where he has performed great as a road quarterback for other teams at MetLife. Throwing it to Anthony for a total in this game. I will jump off with some comments under 42.5.
Yeah, ultimately I do lean Seattle, and I think the Geno and the ghosts of Jets past continue to probably get home against them as this Rodgers infrastructure crumbles. But we're actually looking at the under 42.5. Number I like. Just listen to some of these offensive stats, right? And you're not going to hear a lot of top 10 teams here, right? We're going to rattle these off quickly. Points per yard, Seattle 19th, Jets 23rd. TDs per game, Seattle 12th, Jets 21st. Red zone scoring attempts, Seattle 30th, Jets 15th. Red zone scoring percentage in terms of TDs scored in that red zone, Seattle 18th, Jets 23rd. Offensive TDs per game, Seattle 12th, New York Jets 16th. Offensive points per game, Seattle 19th, Jets 24th. Points per play, Seattle 18th, New York Jets 23rd. These teams in every single offensive category that you could go and find out there are not even ranked in the top 10, generally are outside the top 15, right? So you're talking bottom half worst offenses in the league statistically. The point differential gets super interesting. Seattle sitting in first place there with a +2. The Jets sitting there, struggling, as we know, record-wise at -38, right? But one key thing, too, and why I think ultimately Seattle gets home, since week 9, their defense ranks 4th in the NFL, only allowing 16.3 points per game, and they're 5th against the run. That's really going to bottle things up for Rodgers, that Breece Hall dynamic duo they had with that rookie running back, and now I'm blanking on his name. But getting the two of them going is really the only way important for him to kind of scale and maybe get the Jets offense back on track, but I just don't think it's going to happen in this game. So give me that, sloppy, wintry MetLife kind of atmosphere, and we're going to go under 42.5 right here.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with this. And I think an interesting corollary here in week 2, Seattle traveling to New England.
Yep.
What's your total here? 42.5?
Yeah, that one closed at 39.5, and I think it only went over because of that overtime, right? It's right in that.
It did. Only speaking to the pattern here, 23-20, basically the same exact line. Seattle -2, 42.5. I don't think you're necessarily going to see a repeat of that, obviously backdooring in overtime. But I do think in terms of the actual ATS environment, it could be tight. But I don't entirely know if it will be, because this is actually where Geno Smith has performed really well outside of the division on the road in his career. And that game at New England, actually, Seattle could have opened up with some margin. They just made some mistakes, and New England was kind of scrappy in week 2. And this is still a scrappy New England team. So even though they're coming off of 2 consecutive divisional wins, theoretically a letdown at the Jets now, I think the Jets are just in total shambles. I think they're in total disarray. The first coach gets fired. The second coach looks worse. He's clearly not getting rebooted next year. And I think that the GM, I think Aaron Rodgers making comments about will he or will he not play with the like keeping the team hanging with public comments. And I mean, I understand that you have to, give the media something, and he gives McAfee a lot of really candid remarks, but you're really kind of leaving the locker room in limbo with these comments. So I don't know. Guns, any thoughts on this one?
No, I agree on odds take on this one. I would say this is being under in this one. I kind of lean towards the Jets a little bit. I think it's just a short line. You know, I have Seattle coming off that big win, divisional home win for that matter, 16-6 versus Arizona last week. Maybe the highs of highs. Now they're going on the road. They may kind of hit a flat spot, but like when you play the flat spot, you have unders in those type of situations. And I still think that Jets defense is good enough to hold this Seattle offense back. And you have a Seattle defense is improving as well. And of course, the Jets offense is not great. So I would lean towards the odd side on this one. Just play the total and don't take the side.
Yeah, my first official 1:00 Paycor Stadium in Cincinnati, taking the Bengals at -2.5. That might be 3 in some books. 3 is fine. Just an elite level spot to buy the Bengals. You're looking at a team that is 4-7 straight up, 6-4-1 ATS, which means numerous things, but I think primarily they're due to win more games outright. And when you really start to look at their wins, 4 wins, 3 by double digits, 7 losses, 6 by 1 possession, including a 1-point loss at Kansas City and a 1-point loss at Baltimore. This team is probably, amongst others, but probably number 1 statistical buy low in the entire league. And they are also a buy low at home. As we've talked about on this show week after week, Burrow and Taylor and this group are notorious slow starters. They don't come out ever in September, October, and in their home stadium. Started 0-3-1 ATS. They did finally cover against the Raiders a couple weeks ago. I think that continues upward momentum, and it continues upward momentum to where they have performed well in the division this year. Actually going 2-0-1 ATS, 2 tight losses to Baltimore, and a cover against Cleveland. And if you really look at what's going on here, every game for Cincinnati right now is a Super Bowl. They cannot lose and go to 4-8. That is it. And I think they can actually really catch some upward momentum here because of their schedule. Home versus Pittsburgh, then at Dallas, at Tennessee, home versus Cleveland, home versus Denver, at Pittsburgh. You could make a significant argument they could win all 6 of those games. And you talk about Pittsburgh here very briefly. Pittsburgh is the ultimate level of fool's gold. 8-3 straight up, 8-3 ATS, 4-1 ATS with Russell Wilson. We said it last week versus the Jets, Giants, Washington. Really a backdoor versus Baltimore, and then he finally loses to Cleveland. It's not where you bounce back. Road in the division, both on the road. Final point on this, Pittsburgh won both matchups last year. You get a double revenge game. It was Jake Browning at quarterback, not Joe Burrow. The last 3 times Burrow played Pittsburgh, maybe not surprisingly, 37-30 win in 2022 and 2 wins in 2021 versus Pittsburgh by 14 and 31 points. Top spot on the early board. This is a 3-way collab. Anthony, did I say it all? You got anything for me? Talk to me.
You said it all. No, I mean, look, for me, it's telling too when you get that matchup, standings wise, and look what you have here. You have a 4-7 team. Yes, at home. Yes, in division, right? So a little bit of noise there, but a 4-7 team giving points against an 8-3 team that's first in the division. So that right off the bat should be telling you what's how this game could play out, right? Matchup wise. And for me, I think a big part of it is offensively. I just don't think, this is going to put a lot of pressure on the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. And obviously that's an elite unit. But when you talk about elite units in the NFL, you talk about the Cincinnati Bengals and that offense led by Joe Burrow. And I think at home in this environment, I think they're going to trend upwards. And I think you're going to get the Bengals putting all that pressure onto the Pittsburgh offense. That's just not going to be able to keep up in this game. So I love Cincinnati in this spot. And if you do think they're going to run and get going late, as we've seen them do in other years, plus 400 in that range to make the playoffs. Not a bad little sprinkle either. Just to make the playoffs. That's not even to make noise in the playoffs, right?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of futures, I have some futures on this, but Guns, full alignment. What's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, a 4-7 team at this point in the season has still has playoffs in their eyes. And I agree with it. I think that is a good future to take on this one. But you hit a lot of the key points situationally, Shark. But let's talk about like the spread between the offenses and the defenses for a second. Because Cincinnati, what do they love to do? They love to pass the ball. Burrow in a bevy of wide receiver weapons. They're sixth in pass play percentage, fourth in pass attempts per game, first in passing yards per game, and they're sixth in giving up the QB sacks. And when you look at Pittsburgh, which I found alarming, their vulnerability is in the passing game. They're ranked 17th in opposing passing yards per game, and they don't get to the quarterback as far as QB sacks is concerned. And they have TJ Watt. I know TJ Watt gets a lot of key fumbles in this one, but they're 23rd in the league in QB sack percentage. And then both teams offensively, polar opposites of one another, right? So you have Cincinnati is ranked fifth in touchdowns per game. You have Pittsburgh that's ranked 23rd in touchdowns per game. Then Cincinnati is ranked third in red zone TD scoring percentage. And then Pittsburgh is ranked 30th in TD scoring percentage. What was the detriment of the Pittsburgh offense is all you have to do is when you get in the red zone, you play zone against Russell Wilson, and he doesn't know how to read a zone for anything. And you hit a lot of the key statistical categories here. There's a reason why a 4-7 team is sitting here at home as a favorite versus an 8-3 team. I know that Pittsburgh's coming off a loss, but Cincinnati is on the uptick right now. Like Shark said, they've 6 out of the last 7 losses have been by a possession or less. This is why you need to take the favorite here with Cincinnati. I got it at -2.5 at juice, but I think you get 3 and under on this one. It is a good play. Give me Cincinnati all the way.
Yeah, 3-way collab. Let's dominate. Staying divisional football at 1 o'clock. Fox Sports surprisingly broadcasting Texans at Jaguars. However, in Jacksonville, taking Houston on the road here at -4 for 1 unit. And what you're really looking at here is just a great bounce back for Houston. Houston played an incomprehensibly awful football game last week at home against Tennessee. I had them. I was pretty much blown away by the effort. They basically took the opening kick to the house, 7-0 very quickly. You look back like 10 minutes later, it was 17-7 Tennessee. Tennessee just lighting them up for big plays in the passing game, which just spoke to a lack of focus, which I was very surprised from a DeMeco Ryans-led team. But that all being said, they had blown out Dallas the previous week. They had played Detroit incredibly tough the week before that. So I guess maybe they were flat in the division. I don't know. But regardless, this is where you want to buy low. And this is also where C.J. Stroud performs much better in his career on the road in the division. 3-0 straight up, 2-1 ATS road in the division in his career. Very converse to a 1-5 home ATS in the division career calendar. So you want to buy CJ on the road consistently. And I think not surprisingly for this matchup, 0-2 at home in his career ATS against Jacksonville. Only game ever in this stadium. Go back early season last year, absolute blowout. Houston 37-17. And you talk about Jacksonville here, which is interesting stuff. I think Trevor Lawrence might play. We're not entirely sure. Not really worried about it. Jacksonville's 2-9 straight up. They have nothing to play for. However, they are 6-4-1 ATS. It is statistically so rare to find a team 2-9 to get an outright win, but running a 60% cover rate in that window. They're just way too hot in this environment. And as I mentioned, they did cover in week 4 at Houston. Key point there, Houston dominated the game. 435 yards, only 313. Somehow only won by 4 because of a fumbled punt on the 2-yard line, which gave the Jags a touchdown early in the game. It's a heavier road line than it was at home. I have Houston to win this game in a bounce-back effort by 11 points. Buy it, live it, love it, and let's dominate. And any thoughts on the total in this game or any comments?
On the total, I lean under just because I think Jacksonville is going to struggle to do much. I'm honestly shocked coming off the bye and that beatdown that the Jacksonville Jaguars, the lifeless Jags, kind of took, that Doug Peterson even survived the bye week, because I thought for sure that spelled firing, that spelled coaching change. And yeah, in most cases, you'd think that means the team will come out more well-rested, maybe a little bit different of a look, right? Different schematics, more time to prepare. Some of that goes out the window for me when it's a division rival. And obviously this is an AFC South matchup here. So I lean under, and I love Houston to bounce back because I think the Jags, I think you're going to see the continued trend of what we saw against that Detroit juggernaut in the 52-6 matchup 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. Guns, can I get you to the window on this, or are we moving on?
Who's the quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday? I need to know. I guess yes. From my perspective, it doesn't matter. When you have the Texans egregiously losing as an 8.5 point favorite to the Tennessee Titans, I would think that there is a come up with this one with CJ Stroud in the squad. There's only one way to take this game, and it is Houston. I don't think you get cute and try to take Jacksonville Jaguars on this one. However, I think we need to watch who the quarterback is. I would say it is a stronger play if Mac Jones is the quarterback. But if Trevor Lawrence is the quarterback, I'd probably be a little bit softer on the units of how much I put in this game. You're taking a gamble here. We're recording this one right now. However, let's see who the quarterback is. And I would say it's always Houston. It depends on how much money you want to put on Houston.
Yeah. I mean, we're riding officially. I think it's a great look. Let's dominate. Stay at 1 o'clock. A couple games here we don't have officials on, but we do bring you guys the same conversation every week. All the games, all the top information available to us. Guns doesn't have the hat on this morning. He's rocking a Arkansas Razorbacks helmet, right. But maybe that's a shout to ex-Patriots quarterback Ryan Mallett from the Arkansas Razorbacks. But nonetheless, 1 o'clock, Colts at Patriots.
I think that's RIP too.
Upstart Colts, Patriots sitting at 3-9. I don't really have a whole lot on this game. I think it's a really tough game. Guns, you mentioned you think the over is the best look in this game.
Yeah, I think we have to when we looked at New England early in the season, and actually going back to last season, they were a great underplay. However, I think the uptick has happened with the change in the guards with Drake May at the quarterback. The over is actually 5-1 ATS in New England home games this season. They're giving up 26 points per game, and they're putting up 20. That gives you an indicator of what's going on there. And then you look at New England in the last 3 home games, 28, 22, and 41. They've given up to opponents. Then you have an Indianapolis team that gives up 24 points per game on the road this season and 21 points or more in the last 5 games overall. Then you got to look at New England versus the AFC South. If you want to get really in depth on this one, they played the Houston Texans. 41-21 was the final in that game. The line was set at 30. The total was set at 39.5. They played Jacksonville neutral site in England. 32-16 was the final. The total was 42.5. Tennessee on the road. Granted, that was an under in that game that did go into overtime. 20-17 was the final, but the line was sharp at 38. But that was them on the road. 2-1 to the over versus the AFC South. And I think we've mentioned this before, and I think we mentioned it last week. When the total is 41 points or more in New England games, the over is 5-1 this season. So it's another opportunity to go slamming over from 2 teams, quite frankly, that nobody thinks can score points. I think they will in this game, and 42.5 is a key number. If you look at that one, I think it's 3-1 when the number is 42.5. On the total. So yeah, over is the only play I'd want to do with this one, Shark.
Yeah, I mean, I think going back even in the small window here after Anthony Richardson was reinstated as the starter, go back 2 weeks ago at the New York Jets, 28 points.
Yeah.
And that's against a supposedly stout Jets defense, albeit unmotivated at this point, but still very talented. He's scoring the ball there, and also a great buy low off of basically no offensive effort last week against Detroit. And truthfully, looking at what New England did last week, they did cash the over for us in Miami. That was like pulling teeth to get that over. I mean, New England did nothing offensively until actually getting a defensive touchdown by Christian Gonzalez in the 3rd or 4th quarter, +2 to push it over. But you're going to get a nice bounce back offensively from the Patriots in their home stadium. I haven't looked at the market steam on this, but I actually really like this over. Guns, further.
I got one more key stat on this one. So Indianapolis also played 3 AFC teams, and they played Buffalo 30-20. That went over. 28-27 versus the Jets. That went over. The only over that didn't hit was Miami, where it was 16-10 was the final on that one. But guess who the quarterback was for Miami? It wasn't Tua. It was Tyler Huntley. So that gives you a high indicator that we are looking at an over and a lot of points there on Sunday.
Anthony, you are the totals specialist more often than not. Any thoughts?
No, I like the over. I lean that way too, just with what the more current trends of what you've been seeing out of these two teams. I wish the number was actually a little bit higher because I think that would be even more telling in the market. So I don't know where it opened and if this team's up. And it's definitely one where I think you could bet it live. That's another way I'd look at it too, because I could see these teams starting slow, a little bit sloppy in the first possession or two because of these young quarterbacks, maybe a mistake here or there, right? The coaching on both sides has also been a little suspect. I actually like Shane Steichen a lot, but Jared Mayo leaves a lot to be desired, especially with his offensive game plans. So it's one where I think you could see it dip down a little bit closer to that 35-38 mark at some point in the game and then come roaring back, and I wouldn't be surprised if it gets their full window. So just another way to look at it too from a full game perspective.
Almost like last week, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, that number ticked down, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's just a great baseline point for any total in football because the first quarter oftentimes is not representative of the rest of the game, right. And it's not even the back door. It's really just the fact that the fatigue builds over the course of the game, and the game opens up when defenses are fatigued. So sharp stuff there. Best look in this game over, and of course some sharp analysis on in-game betting from the odds fellow. Staying at 1:00, another game with a lot of intrigue. Looking at Minnesota, we're going to work on this throughout the conversation, but I think this is a great look for Minnesota. And I really want to look at one specific thing about their statistical flow here. Minnesota started 5-0 ATS. They kind of caught everybody napping, and by surprise. They moved Kirk Cousins. They advertised J.J. McCarthy. All of a sudden, it's Sam Darnold. And I don't think anybody knew what to make of this team coming into the season with Darnold. And I think the first takeaway that we all have to give massive credential to is the fact that Kevin O'Connell is a great, great quarterbacks coach. He made Kirk Cousins look a lot better than Kirk had looked prior, and he's making Sam Darnold look like a very representative pro. So, staying course with that, if you allow that 5-0 sample to be the league not being adjusted, therefore, maybe Minnesota caught a bit of a fortuitous sample in their favor. Then they had a bye week. They came back. The last 6 games, they're 2-4 ATS. So you'd say to yourself, all right, they were too hot. The league adjusted. Now they're just not very good ATS. This is where it gets interesting. I don't think so. I think they're actually very good ATS. They've actually just hit a cluster of outliers to hit that 2-4 sample. And if you go back to week 7, game against Detroit, back and forth game. There was pretty significant leads on both sides of the game throughout. But late in the fourth quarter, Minnesota had a chance to get a first down or two with the ball and the lead to eventually run out the clock and kneel down. They could not get those first downs, ended up punting, and Detroit came back and kicked a game-winning field goal. But the point here is it's very well acknowledged at this point in the season that Detroit is the favorite to win the Super Bowl. Minnesota was right there with Detroit. Right there. Then they laid an egg on the road at the Rams, which is fine. Total letdown. Let that be what it is. 2 non-covers since at Jacksonville. 12-7, -5.5, hook non-cover. They outgained them in that game by about 4-1. Talk about an absolute outlier. And then last week at Chicago, 30-27 in overtime. That is not how that game played at all. That game very well could have ended 27-16 Minnesota. They were in control the entire way. Chicago had a late touchdown with DJ Moore, an onside kick, a field goal, and then it went to overtime. Point is, 2 out of their last 3 games, they didn't cover in egregious, outlierish manner. So this is actually a buy low on Minnesota. And we were just talking about it before the show. Arizona has definitely taken on a buy element on the road for pretty much the duration of Kyler Murray's career. I think we're seeing some more clarity at this point as to where he performs well on the road versus not. So far this year, outside of the division, he's 2-0 ATS at the AFC East. Key point, outside of the conference, we talk about this with Lamar Jackson. The other conference can't scheme for like a real running quarterback. It's just hard to scheme against. Fine. Did not cover his only road out-of-division game this year at the NFC North. A blowout, 34-13. And here's the key point on that. That was the second game in a road sequence of a tight, low-scoring game the previous week at San Francisco. That is precisely where Arizona finds themselves now. 16-6 loss last week at Seattle. Low scoring, turnovers, a lot tighter than the final result actually suggested. Now they got to go on the road. Very similar figure, plus 3.5 to where they were at Green Bay. I'm not going to sit here and argue that Kyler hasn't been great in his career on the road. I've actually bought him numerous times in that window successfully. I think within this season, road back-to-back off a divisional game, traveling here is very difficult. We will get to it. I'm not going to drop it officially right now, but I think Minnesota is a very sharp take. Anthony, any comments on the total or the side?
When I first saw the number, especially sitting at 3.5, it was kind of us coming off that loss and that performance last year. It was your eyes kind of light up and you say, well, that's probably where I lean and where I'll take it and where I'll chase it. Because I've been on that. I've been on this Arizona team in different spots, but I was on them in that Cardinals-Packers matchup. And when I tell you it wasn't even as close as 34-13 says, right, I think it started 24-0, right? They jumped out. I think going on the road here in that sequence that the Shark described is really key. And I think this Minnesota defense, Brian Flores led, is very, 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 very good. They minimize some of these things and the mistakes that the offense can make. They put the team to be in the mix, even if they have a bad quarter, a bad half, which I've been at some games live with watching them play, and they're always in the mix, right? And I think that's what you're going to have them do here in Arizona against, the Cardinals need to win games against the division, right? That's what's going to matter ultimately with how jumbled this thing is up. So I would lean Vikings on the total. I really don't have a look because I think it's a pretty sharp side with the way the Vikings defense could play, but how explosive and kind of outlierish both of these teams have been at times.
Yeah. So great conversation here. Keeping it moving. 1 o'clock, last 1 o'clock game here in week 13. Another very interesting game that I think is a lot more interesting than we may have thought going into last week. Tennessee at Washington. Washington lays a complete egg at home to Cooper Rush and the Cowboys. 34-26 loss. Again, a wild game, kind of like we described with Minnesota, Chicago in the division. Didn't get to those points until the last 2 minutes of the game with 3 touchdowns in the last 5 minutes. 34-26 did not tell you the story of that game at all. It was actually kind of a throwback, low scoring, 1940s style game. But nonetheless, Washington at some point has to bounce back. 3 straight losses, lost to Pittsburgh. Let that be what it is. Pittsburgh's clearly of some class in this campaign. Lost at Philadelphia. Philadelphia also looking quite good. And then an outlier loss. So are they just cratering completely? Or were those all kind of situational spots against better teams and weird outliers? I would lean towards a bounce back here for Washington. Guns, any thoughts?
I agree with you. I think this is one of those slam spots for the Washington Commanders. I mean, listen, coming off those losses, I think what they 3 straight losses in a row. This is one of those teams that are very due for a bounce back, and they're playing a Tennessee team that has played absolutely horrible all season, and they're coming off a big divisional win last week. Listen. If you like Washington, you like the over. That's what I'll say about that one, because Washington is going to put 30+ in this game. Even though that Tennessee, you could say yardage-wise, they're in the top 5, but they do give a lot on the defensive scoring. If you look at their statistics, I think this is one of those spots that is a dead spot for Tennessee, but a must-win for Washington because they want to keep in the playoff talk. Like a lot of people are writing them off right now. I know Washington was a public darling for a while. Maybe when you peel back the onion, you get some layers on that one, and you'll get some value with Washington right now. And I would only take the Washington side on this one, and I would only take the over. I'm not officially on any of the side or the total in this one, but I think this is a bounce back spot for the Commanders.
Yeah, odds. Any comments on the total or anything of that nature?
Let's keep her moving.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as we close this up and go to the 4 o'clock slate, as much as I want to buy low on Washington, I am a bit concerned, to use a favorite of our group chat word here, that Washington was clearly very hot. I don't think they necessarily come back and lose this game to Tennessee. It does concern me to a certain degree this could be a field goal game, because when I'm looking at Tennessee, I think Tennessee does have a statistical buy low in them. They were 1-9 ATS prior to covering at Houston. But if you actually start to look at the Will Levis sample, he's actually performed reasonably well on the road all year. If you go back to week 1, I'm sure you guys remember Tennessee had a significant lead at Chicago, I believe 17-0 in the game, and proceeded to completely melt the game because of a special teams touchdown for Chicago and a defensive touchdown. Point being, Tennessee was pretty representative at Chicago. Then Levis got hurt. Road games at Miami, Buffalo, and Detroit were all Mason Rudolph. So Levis didn't play another road game after week 1 until week 10 at Los Angeles Chargers, and he played reasonably well. They didn't cover, but it was close enough, 27-17 against really an elite team. And then, obviously, last week, beating Houston outright in a game that, I said I think Houston played a terrible game, but Tennessee dominated the game. So I don't know if you can totally throw out Tennessee upticking here. And again, numerically, 1-9 has to improve in some format, particularly in professional football, where these are the top players on the planet, just always kind of pulling back to 50-50 more than not. So it just keeps me off it for that reason. I think that Levis potentially has something in him. And just one final point on this. I was just reading, since there was some sort of scheme change going back about 3 weeks, Levis has completed 8 explosive passes over the last 3 games, including a 63-yarder to Calvin Ridley. And it seems like a scheme change. So something's changed here. As much as we introed this game saying we like Washington, we do like Washington to bounce back. I'm not sure selling Tennessee at this point in their statistical flow is very good, however. So
I got a good blind prop on that game. Just take Will Levis over his interceptions. He's due for one, and I usually set it at a half a interception. It may be juiced at this point, but he threw a pick 6 last week, even though they won the game versus Houston. He just is inevitable going to throw a pick in this game. I know it's juice. It might be a minus 200 by the time game time hits, but just take it. It's easy money.
Another point too that plays into you saying he's going to throw that pick, and he probably will. And the way we're talking, and this is why I love this show too, right? And hopefully you guys enjoy it. Like I said, I didn't have a lot of analysis, but as you start talking and thinking and seeing other things, right? The 3 of us talk a lot. We share a lot on this show. This Tennessee defense is also very underrated. Now, this is only one statistical way to look at it, but they're second in the league in terms of opponent yards per game, right? Which is obviously a big point. You're always going to get the scoring and the red zone percentages and the outliers and those things move. But chunk plays like giving up yardage and moving the ball, they're literally second behind the Philadelphia Eagles, and they're even better on the road, right? So that average sitting at 276.4, that's good enough for second in 2024. Drops to 252.5 on the road. Now, if you really think about this game and how it could flow, I don't trust Will Levis, even though this schematically maybe it is a little bit better. Jaden Daniels, I think, is banged up, right? And Shark talked about the way that Dallas game finished. That game had missed field goals, stopped drives, right? It was, and I took the second half
extra
over
points too.
I knew it would get going a little bit, but the way it played out was what I had the second half over early in the fourth quarter before it even exploded. I think you have another underlook here because I think that Tennessee defense, against what is a Commanders offense that's still kind of finding their way, right? That McLaurin touchdown probably doesn't happen if they're not trailing. And then you had 2 kick returns for
onside kick
on the Dallas side.
return.
So I would lean under. I think it's a weird number sitting there at 5.5, even though it is a bounce back spot.
Yep. Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, tough game, but it's the intrigue and the as Anthony said, the detailed conversation we bring to you here on the extra points. There's so much more to handicapping a professional football game than saying we just don't like the game. Like when you start to really understand where teams are on their statistical arc, you're able to visualize where you want to buy teams and where you want to sell teams and understand the precise numerical and psychological environment that they're in. And that's how you win. It's not about to beat the NFL and beat any sport. You have to be almost living with each team in the locker room. You have to really know where they are on the calendar, coming up, coming down, psychologically, statistically. And when you really get in there, when you look at the board, okay, this is where they're going. So Tennessee should continue to improve. Maybe Washington capped out early. They should come back. I think truthfully, the moral of the story is we probably see this game being somewhere around 28 to, or maybe 27 to 25 Washington. I mean, that would speak to an over, but I don't know. I think that the Titans, you guys said that the Titans defense has been good, but Levis just brings an openness to the game. So it's the defense kind of falls trapped to how wild he makes the game. And you've seen some overs with this defense that have all been because the offense just makes the game so crazy. So interesting point.
Going back to Odd's point, though, yes, they're good against the yardage, but look at the opponent's scoring. It's it's night and day. Higher. I mean, Tennessee gives up points. I don't understand it, and I think that has to do with Will Levis doing dumb things and giving up defensive scores. So, there's anomalies with the Tennessee Titans that are unexplainable in a lot of cases, but when you check the box score, it's Will Levis is the kind of the factor in a lot of the statistical categories.
Yeah, and truthfully, when you look at the Titans' road games, this is actually kind of a high line for them. So I think books are expecting more points in this environment. So staying there, great conversation. A little bit long, but we love talking about it with you guys here. So segueing to the 4:00 slate here. Speaking of totals in this range, divisional football 405 in Carolina, 3-8 Panthers, 5-6 Bucks. Guns has a total. I like this total. I'll throw it to the gun. Official over 46.5.
Yeah, I was trying to get to the side with Carolina, and I may still get to the side with Carolina because I think Carolina is starting to have an uptick in momentum. But I love the total in this one. It's my favorite total of the week. When you look at both teams, what do they do? What are both of them consistently doing? They're bad at keeping their opponents from scoring. Tampa Bay is ranked 24th in opposing scoring, giving up 24.8 points per game, and Carolina is ranked dead last in opponent scoring, giving up 30.9 points per game. And then you look at Carolina, they're comfortable at home. They're on the 4th leg of a long home stretch and they're finding rhythm. 2 out of the last 3 games they have won, and their only loss was against Kansas City. And I think if you check the records, Kansas City is a pretty good team. They only lost by 3 points. The offense has also improved as well. They put up over 300 yards of total offense in the last 2 weeks. And also Carolina has put up 20-plus points in 3 straight games. Carolina is a bye team. Let me just say that right now. Tampa, while they've lost 4 out of the last 5 games, they can't stop this team from scoring points, right? Last 5 games, this is what Tampa has put up. 31, 26, 24, 20, and 30. They average 28 points per game overall and 31 points per game on the road. And this is a team that has lost 4 out of the last 5 games. This is why this is a high indicator of an over. In the last 2 times these teams have met, going back to last season, the total was exactly 36.5 points. Now you're seeing it at 46.5 right now. The over is hit 4 straight for Carolina in their home games. And this total is tied for the highest total in Carolina home games. The other total that was this high was against Cincinnati. Guess what the outcome of that game was? 34-24, 58 total points. The over is hit 3 out of the last 4 for Tampa's road games. They were the under last week against the Giants, but that was against DeVito, not Danny DeVito. And it's the second highest total on the road for Tampa this season. Also, Tampa 6-2 to the over in the last 8 games. And in the last 2 games, it has hit under. So I think this is a good high indicator that we need to be taking it over. So divisional matchup here. Tampa, Carolina over the total. 46.5 is the play.
Yeah, no, when I was looking at this, I completely agree. As we mentioned, this is just a Carolina team that plays basically no defense. I mean, this has been the entire season. You saw it last week. We said on this show, the Chiefs probably win. Carolina's probably pretty representative. Sure enough, 30-27, non-cover Chiefs and an over. And, when you look at what Bryce Young has done since returning, it's interesting how these quarterbacks come in and out, and they go away for a few weeks and they come back. And we said it with Anthony Richardson. He went away. He's looked a lot better since he came back. Even Will Levis, he's looked better since he came back. Bryce Young has looked a lot better since he's come back. I mean, to the surprise of everybody, I think, including the three of us, when he came back, I think we thought, here comes a continued blowout tour. No, they won 2 games. They beat the Giants overseas, and they competed to a 3-point margin against the Chiefs. So I think the Panthers have found something. I think it's very hard for any professional football team to continuously crater forever. There's just that much talent on these rosters. The over is a great look in this game. I had a small concern, but I'm not worried about it. Anthony, any comments on it?
No, I just think that that Tampa playoff ticket or Tampa division ticket could get to the window. So keep your eye on it. There still might be some value because they're still fighting.
Yeah, I think Atlanta might drop.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And staying the course here, 4:00, another game involving the NFC South. However, not a divisional game. Rams on the road at the Superdome at 4:05. Something that we found when we were just doing a little pre-show here that I thought was very interesting about this game. This is not a national broadcast 4:00 game with Tom Brady and the host on the call, Kevin Burkhardt. This is a random game. The league decided to make it 4:05. What does that mean? They're helping a Pacific team travel to the East Coast off a primetime game, not putting it at 10 a.m. Pacific. Does the league like McVay? I don't know. I do know Anthony likes McVay this week. Rams official, -2.5.
Yeah, we talked about bounce back, right? We talked about getting into the minds of these guys, these coaches, these spots, right? This is a buy low. I think the Rams are still a good team. Again, talking about that jumbled up NFC West that is very injured and very messy right now. Not a lot of separation between those teams. But when you really dial it in, we'll get to the 4:00 and how the Rams have performed a little bit. But for me, a big part of this is the Saints against playoff teams outside of their division, right? Because obviously either Atlanta or Tampa is going to get in. So it's a little bit muddy when you look at it inside the division. But they're 0-4 against teams outside. Early in the year, I think it was week 2 or 3, they lost to Philly 15-12 in New Orleans. That was really before Philly got going, right? That was a Nick Sirianni hot seat Philadelphia moment. Then they lose to KC 26-13 on the road. At home against Denver, they get banged up 33-10. And then against the Chargers, 26-8 on the road. So outside of the 15-12 game against Philly, none of these have really been close, right? And then against bad teams, they're 4-3. They split with Atlanta, blown out by Tampa. But that pattern has been there where I just don't think they're playing, up to that next layer of competition, especially if they've gone through a lot of injuries on the offensive line, so coaching changes, things that we've seen. And they don't have the same home field advantage that they used to. Usually I'd be afraid, right? Back in the day, the Saints that a lot of you grew up watching, it was a nightmare of a place to play. They're 3-3 at home, right? So that kind of goes out the window as well. Now you get into what Shark was just explaining about the Rams, McVay, a team getting healthier, right? That needs the W in a pattern of playing poorly at home in prime time and then going in the road and playing better in other spots. So that happened when they got beat up against Miami, and now they're coming off that bad Philadelphia loss. A game, frankly, I think a lot of us were on or thinking about the Rams in that spot, and they just couldn't compete. So I love them going to the East Coast, getting that 4:05 slot, being able to almost in a lot of ways, right, take care of business behind closed doors, as weird as that sounds. And I think that's what you're going to get here. So I think it's a blowout, bounce back spot for the Rams. I think the Saints got some of that boost and some of that push off the the new coach change, and I think that's about to ride into the sunset for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with this, and I think you're seeing just very specific, not necessarily line functionality in the division, but more so the way the line is just correlating to Rams outcomes outside of the division. Go back early season, they took a 6-point loss at Chicago. Key point, Chicago was favored in the game, -3.5. So books had Chicago correctly graded against the Rams. Then the Rams played the Packers at home. Packers were laying 3.5, 4 points. Packers covered as a favorite 24-19. Then it flipped, and the books made the Rams a road favorite at New England, -4, and they covered. So here's the point about these small field goal-ish lines outside of the division. When the Rams are a dog, they're 0-2 ATS, both tight. And when they're a favorite, they're 1-0 ATS, tight. So we don't necessarily think this is going to be a blowout. Anthony said it's going to be a blowout. I don't entirely think it's going to be a blowout. I do think the Rams are the side. And one additional point on this, if you just look at the pattern of the Rams' schedule in recent history, it's actually fairly uncanny how transparent this is. Go back a few weeks ago. They took a primetime out-of-division home loss against Miami. Then they flew cross-country as a road favorite outside the division and covered at New England. Then they came back outside of the division, prime time, and lost to the Eagles. Now they fly back across country to the Saints as a road favorite. It doesn't get much more clear than that, in my opinion. I think the Rams will show up here. I think the Saints, albeit a bye off of a brutal stretch with Spencer Rattler and Jake Hayner, are not even remotely in the class from a coaching perspective, even more importantly than personnel, than Sean McVay versus Dennis Allen here. I might get to the Rams. God's any thoughts?
I agree with you on this one. You said it perfectly about the situation. It's like how this Rams team performs in that travel across and everything like that. Listen, the Saints are a falling knife. The patine has kind of worn on this Saints team with the interim coach now. And then you have a Rams team that is now officially like all weapons are there. Everybody's healthy. And this is a team that still is on the rise and still has playoff hopes in mind. And I think that, you mentioned putting futures on the Bengals earlier in the show. I think we should be putting futures on the Rams too, because I think this is still a team that can make the playoffs, especially how healthy they are, getting Puka Nacua back and Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams in the backfield, and of course Matt Stafford. I think this is a team that we need to buy now. And we have a perfect spot here against an NFC South team on the road. And quite frankly, I think the Rams are continually going to be a buy team moving forward. We'll have to pick our spots here and there, but I agree with Odds on his play here. We have to be taking the Rams or nothing.
Yeah, look, and we were talking about it. I mean, maybe the Seahawks get home. We talked about the Cardinals as a loss. The Rams are 5-6. The Cardinals and the Seahawks are 6-5. The Rams are plus 400 to win that division.
Yeah,
it's another one too, right?
Open division too in the NFC West. Yeah. Open division.
Yeah, and just as I mentioned, all that stuff about the Rams and all these spots. If you look at the Saints, this is equally as good. The Saints are on a dub 2. They barely beat Atlanta. Then they beat Cleveland. Key point here, as a home out of division favorite.
Yeah.
So when books had them favored in this spot, they hammered Cleveland. Now the line flips to the out-of-division team being a favorite at the Superdome. This is 100% a Rams spot. As you said, this is incredible stuff in the NFC West. These teams are separated by a half game. 6-5, 6-5, 5-6, 5.
It's a mess.
Very competitive.
They're going to beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And just based on that, if you expect Seattle to potentially beat the Jets this week, and again, you have to consider what these coaches are talking about with their players. Like, they're not just so tunnel vision of themselves. Like, McVay is absolutely aware of the fact that the Seahawks are probably going to go to 7-5 this week, where if the Rams lose and go to 5-7, all of a sudden you have a 2-game gap. So it's a big swing. And he's aware of that. Like, it's a real point. Like, he's not just going in there and saying, okay, here's our game plan against the Saints. Let's get it together, guys. He's saying to them, listen, we're very much alive in our division, and these teams might win this week. So it's extra pressure on
The
them.
Cardinals are leading the division. Remember the Cardinals in the last 2 or 3 years couldn't win a divisional game or cover a divisional game. This is telling you everything. The uptick's coming, and I think the Rams are the buy spot.
Yeah, and not only that, but it's pretty insane that the Seahawks, Cardinals, and 49ers all have a point differential inside of 8 points to each other. The Rams are minus 43. I'm trying to say, why are the Rams minus 43? Okay, they lost by 31 at Arizona.
They weren't healthy. They were missing weapons.
Yep, they got
banged up.
Yeah, at one point they didn't have. I
didn't have anybody. Their offensive line was hurting.
They
had no weapons.
Matt
Stafford was just giving the ball to Kyron Williams and hoping that he'd get a yard.
Yeah,
that's
Puka,
why.
Puka and Kupp were both out for an extended stretch.
Yeah, and if you look at their point differential, they lost by 31 at Arizona and then 17 last week against Philadelphia. That's 48. So 2 games is their entire negative differential.
That's
so
why it's important. That's why it's important to not look at the entire resume of a team. Look at the last 4 to 5 games of a lot of these teams, because they can continue to shift momentum as far as from every 4-game window. And the same thing goes with every single sport in football. You can do that with college football. It's it's not how you did in your first 4 games, it's how you do now. And I think with the NFL, you got to treat it the same way.
Absolutely. This is a very good spot. I'll just go official with it right now on the show. As you guys know, we're pre-recording on Wednesday night. We appreciate you guys.
Put me on the Rams, too. Let's make it a 3. Put me
on
the Rams.
We're simulating a Sunday, December 1st, green energy vibes, 3-way collaboration. I'm looking at what lines we can get now here. I think money line might be available.
2.5 minus 115, 2.5 minus 120. So the money line might be a better bet at some of those.
Minus 130, minus 140.
It's actually higher. It's 145.
That's huge. That for a 2.5 or a 3, that's key. I'll just take the spread then.
Minus 2.5, minus 115 is the best.
3 ways have been good. The 3 ways have been good.
I'll write it down. Minus 2.5.
And put me on it too. Give me that damn number.
All right, got it. And okay, perfect. Yeah, I mean, that's just great stuff. Absolutely fantastic stuff. And again, the NFC playoff picture is just so wide open.
Awesome. You call it
wide open. Yeah, you have the Commanders at 7-5 in the 7th spot. Arizona, Tampa, Rams, Niners, Saints, Bears, and even the Cowboys are all within 2.5 games of each other.
My head exploded. I know.
AFC is worse too.
If we beat the Giants tomorrow on Thursday.
Unbelievable. Taking a breath here, 57 minutes in. My next official, big time stuff, 425 in Baltimore. Wish I had the hat, but I certainly have the energy, and we certainly have the official play. Baltimore minus 2.5, 1 unit. That is minus 3 now. This is a massive spot for Baltimore, and this is where Baltimore performs very, very well. They are a statistical buy low, started poorly, showing momentum, are actually very good at home, 3-1 ATS outside of the division. I think a key point on that, only non-cover early season, a backdoor against the Raiders and Gardner Minshew. It was early in the year. Gardner was scrappy. Ravens had a huge lead. Just let that be what it is. Look at what they've done since. Beat Washington and covered, minus 6.5. Hammered Denver, a very good Denver team, 41-10. And I think a very important line corollary here. Only time this year they laid 3 points at home outside of the division. Laid it to Buffalo in week 4, 35-10. And what you guys might remember at that point, at the beginning of week 4, Buffalo was 3-0. They looked very impressive, and the media had pretty much anointed them as being back and the elite team in the AFC. And Baltimore just lit them up. That's pretty much where you find Philadelphia right now, just on a far higher level. Not just 3 games. Philadelphia is on a 7-game outright win streak, 5-1 ATS last 5, and really in a brutal spot. Road win at Rams in prime time, stay on the road, and go to Baltimore. In Jalen Hurts' career, he is 1-3 ATS in the second leg of a road sequence if he covered the previous game. You saw it earlier this year. They covered a game and won outright at the Saints. stayed on the road outside of the division the following week and got blown out at Tampa Bay. This is where all worlds collide. Philadelphia's win streak, 7 in a row. Only one team currently in the playoffs in that cluster. It's a soft schedule. They obviously look good. We love some of their guys. Saquon Barkley has looked absolutely electric. It's never personal. It's just analytical. Baltimore, lay down the hammer. Guns picks. Do you agree?
I always say this. There's two situations that are a must take with the Baltimore Ravens. It's awful loss, which was last week. This is why we took the Ravens, and when they're playing the NFC. Yeah, it's like those are the two windows that you got to take this team, and then it's a perfect situation because you have two great teams that are on the rise. However, I think on the Philadelphia side, this team is so overinflated, right? It reminds me of last year. It reminds me of that time. I think it's around this, at least this week or the week after or something like that. It was like when you had Philly that would just win in every single game, right? Then they had to play the 49ers, a team that was a little bit of a step up in class. And what happened? The 49ers thumped them, and it started this weird trend with the Eagles where they just lost every single game after that, right? We may have the situation here. The Ravens are just a bye team. They could run the ball well. Their defense is continually improving. You saw it last week, especially against the pass. I think this is another one of those situations that we just have to keep buying the Ravens for now until maybe a divisional game when they kind of like flub up and fall asleep at the wheel. I think this is, I'm just trusting that Jackson. I'm trusting John Harbaugh. I'm trusting that defense. I'm trusting everything about this team that I think, especially where most of the offense is coming from Saquon Barkley, right? Big runs and a lot of touchdowns. They're playing a top 5 rush defense here with the Baltimore Ravens, and giving the ball into Jalen Hurts' hands and making him pass the ball may be the downfall of this Eagles team. So it's Ravens or nothing for me.
Absolutely. Anthony, any comments? Can we get you 3-way on this one?
Let's do it.
I want to look something up here while we're going.
I love any opportunity to fade Philly. But no, I think the Ravens, I'm high on both of these teams. I think, again, in the futures markets, how they're both constructed, I think in a playoff atmosphere, I just think it's just still a tough matchup for Philly because a lot of the, what I love to look at is the matchups on both sides of the ball. And the way Guns described it, I think is really true. The key for me and the matchup and the best unit on the field could be that Ravens run defense, right? And how they stop and match up against Philly. And then I think that really takes a lot of the air out of the tires of Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, and the rest of that Eagles offense. So I'll go 3-way, and we'll get it done on Sunday Night Football.
Well, I totally agree. And Gunn's point about the San Francisco game last year was a great point. I was on San Francisco last year. It was, as you said, basically the same calendar spot. Philadelphia was so hot. Everybody thought they're going to run the table again, go to the Super Bowl. And I said on a video, I said the 49ers are the disruption. We'll say it this year. The Ravens are the disruption. Turn up the hammer. Let's dominate. Last game on the Sunday card, very brief conversation here. Niners in complete disarray, more injuries than probably any team in the league to principal players. We were saying it before the show. The craziness of this is, you know what? Maybe the Niners' physicality is actually coming back to bite them a little bit. When you watch a Niners game, you can hear the hits through the screen. These guys hit so hard, and it's just getting to them. It's not just their offensive players. It's Nick Bosa. It's Greenlaw. It's what's his name? Lenore. It came out this week that Fred Warner's been playing with a fractured bone in his ankle since like week 4. And you're never going to say don't be physical in pro football, but if you're all getting injured, I don't even know what to say. Tough game. Bills here, obviously elite. This is unfortunate because this game was supposed to be an absolute marquee showcase game at 8:20. I don't know what to make of it. We don't know if Brock Purdy's going to play. Guns, any thoughts?
Line's telling a story of this one. I mean, you played in Orchard Park, and it's -7 for a 49ers team that it just coming off the Super Bowl, but it has to do with the injuries. Who's going to be the quarterback in this game, right? Is Brock Purdy going to be ready to play? Like, I have to wait for the injury report to come out to even even try to cap this game. And Buffalo is just one of the hottest teams in the NFL. If not, I would say they're probably the second best team in the NFL right now, currently, as far as the ranking goes. Baltimore being very close to that one. And of course, Detroit taking the number one slot in my power rankings. I'm not going to fade Buffalo. And I'm not in a position right now to go take the 49ers as a dog, just on the sheer fact that, like, their roster, I never know who's going to be playing week to week. So I think you make decisions on game time if you really want to actually put some action on this game. But from my perspective, I think it's a pass completely for me.
Yeah, and are you going to get there on this game, or are we just
not nothing this early? And looking at the injury report, I do think if you could start getting indicators that they're going to have more guys in the mix, then I would probably lean and take the Niners as that line starts moving or before it does move, because it's going to be a kitchen sink type of game for them. But nothing for me right now.
Yeah, taking a breath. Monday Night Football. We don't always go into Monday Night Football. We do want to talk about this game for a few minutes. This game has a lot of access. I think all three of us are looking at Denver. This is not Denver, just square Denver, cover every game Denver, autopilot. This is deep situational analysis. This is Peyton. This is Bo Nix. This is two guys really growing together. It's maybe a little too early to say this is the same type of thing you saw with a young Drew Brees and Sean Payton, but it certainly could play in that direction. I think the mental makeup of Drew Brees, notably very mature coming out of college. I believe he used to train with the Marines. He used to bring all the Marines to camp, and they would just get in there. Look at Bo Nix, noteworthy, responsible, intelligent remarks consistently. I think this is potentially a continued upward point. It's something we talk about all the time on NFL The Extra Points. In the very beginning of a journey for a team, you don't fade them. They have clustered upward movement. It's what you're seeing here. That's why they're laying 5.5 points. I got some more comments. Guns, what do you think about this one?
And the line's telling a story sitting here at -5.5 as we're recording this show. But you have Cleveland that's coming off a win versus Pittsburgh division game. But break down the box score here for a second here and pump the brakes, because Cleveland lost the yardage battle with a -64 net yards, and they had a -2 turnover ratio. You have to ask yourself, how did they win the game? I mean, Pittsburgh missed a field goal, 2 turnovers on downs, and a fumble. That's how they lost that game. Even though Pittsburgh did win the turnover battle, they actually scored most of their points in the fourth quarter. But when we look at this Denver team, their strength has been their defense all season. They're third in opposing scoring, giving up 16.8 points per game. They're third in opposing yards per game. They're number 1 in yards per play and number 1 in opposing red zone scoring. This is a good defense. Credit to Sean Payton, and credit to a defense that has, I would say, 85% of their players that are on a contract year. So they're playing their ass off. And I know Denver is going to fall apart next season, but I digress. They're going to have an exceptional season this year. And then you look at the Denver offense, 19th in the offensive scoring. However, this team is on an uptick as far as the offenses go, because Bo Nix is getting comfortable. They've averaged 25.3 points per game in the last 6 games. And in that span, they didn't score 20 in 2 of those games, which were losses. And guess who they were against? 2 of the best teams in the AFC, Baltimore and KC on the road. Then you got to look at Denver. 5 out of the last 6 games, they've covered the spread. They're 5-0 ATS as a favorite. So when they're a favorite, the Broncos are a take. On the Cleveland side, they're 1-4 straight up on the road this season. Their only win on the road was against Jacksonville. We know how bad Jacksonville is. Their road losses, though, you break those down, they've lost by an average of 12.5 points per game. I think Denver, like Shark said, is a team we just got to keep buying. This is a very good team, a very well-coached team, and a quarterback, as the development of this quarterback is going, Bo Nix is a dog. And he is underrated as far as the rookie quarterbacks go. And I think this team will continue to score at margin and win this game easily. Give me Denver -5.5.
Yeah, completely agreed. Any comments on this one?
Just keep it on that futures market. Something while these guys are bringing you some breakdowns. If you want to think about Bo Nix, right, and see where that trend is going, and if he got that dog in him, He's moved all the way up to like plus 130, second in the futures market for offense.
He's the best rookie quarterback in the league.
Year.
I'm sorry.
He's obviously still trailing Jaden Daniels minus 165, but keep in mind, right, still a little bit of value. If Daniels stubs his toe against the Titans again and Knicks has a show out again, you're going to see that line
or throws 2 picks like he's been doing lately. He's been throwing a lot of picks.
Yeah, without question. And just final point on this, on the Cleveland side of this game, like we suggested with the Rams spot, very transparent week-to-week situational schedule analysis. Since Jameis became the quarterback, they're literally just flip-flopping good divisional home efforts and poor out-of-division efforts. I mean, doesn't get any more transparent than this. Week 8, beat Baltimore at home 29-24 by 5 points exactly. Then lost to the Chargers by 17. Then lost at New Orleans by 21. And then beat Pittsburgh at home by 5 points. 2 divisional home wins by 5 exactly. And 2 blowouts outside of the division by 17-21. And you see the efficiency that, like Gunn said, of Denver as a favorite. They're hammering teams like this. The last time they played an out-of-division game, they freaking blew out Atlanta at home 38-6. It has blowout written all over it. I'm on it officially. Denver minus 5.5. That's the show for this week. An hour and 10 minutes in the books. We hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving, and let's dominate this Sunday. My top plays: Cincinnati minus 2.5, Houston minus 4, Baltimore minus 2.5, Rams minus 2.5, working on Minnesota for a number, and Denver minus 5.5. Odds fellow Cincinnati collaboration minus 2.5. Seattle versus the Jets under 42.5. Rams collaboration minus 2.5. Baltimore minus 2.5. And the gun, Chargers money line on the road minus 112. Three-way collab, Cincinnati minus 2.5. Tampa Bay, Carolina over 46.5. And we are also looking at the over in the Colts-Patriots game for the record. Rams collab and Baltimore collab. A pleasure as always, guys. Sending you guys the best vibes as we open up the month. December is for domination. Sundays are for the Sharps. Guns picks, a pleasure. Close them out with some words, and let's dominate.
Yeah, we're recording this early, but I can't really say it right now. Can I promote Thursday? Can't, because this is coming out on Sunday. But all I can say is follow us along on all social media platforms, exclusively on X, at Guns Picks, at Sharks and Sports 88, and the odds fellow. Put some underscores in between the words and you can figure that one out. And follow the YouTube channels that we put out our content on, the Guns Picks channel and Sharky Waters Nation. Like, subscribe, and comment. That is how we get in the algorithm of all algorithms that the sports betting YouTube world deems fit. But that's going to do it here for the Extra Point Show. Let's cash some tickets. Let's dominate the bowl. And as always, let's keep dancing. Geek bang.